just fundamentally, just on the basics, because you just mentioned almost equivalent to oxygen. Well, we would choke without fungi as well, and I'll tell you why. So they do all fungi fruit bodies, generally speaking, do one of three things. So whether it's one of these balls I've talked about, a puff ball, or a crust, or like I said, a mushroom over there, they're all doing one of three things. Okay, the three roles for fungi, if you walk into the woods and see them, are either the friend, the recycler, or the killer. So the friend being these mycorrhizal ones that actually work with a tree. There are certain fungi, mushrooms, if you see them in the ground when you walk out, whether it be on the lawn in your home, a grass verge on the way to the local bus station, or in the woods. There are some mushrooms that can only be there because it's actually living in partnership with that tree. So did you mention sets? Do you guys sell sets?
Yeah.
That's one. It cannot be cultivated, and still yet we have not found a way, because that relationship is so intricate with certain trees. It grows with often birch, beech, pine, and oak. They're its four favorite trees to grow with. And that mycorrhizal, that symbiosis, means that they look after each other. Because they can't photosynthesize. Just a little fact for people is that they are more closely related to animals than they are plants. A plant can photosynthesize, create its own food. A mushroom cannot. So actually we're closer because we both digest what our surroundings. We do it internally, they do it externally, the fungus. Sorry, I'm going off on tangents.
They do externally. How do they do it? No, this is amazing. How do they do it externally?
This is a 5-hour podcast. Is that right? Is this the one?
Absolutely. We get lost in it.
Sorry. Yeah, it's so those thread-like structures that mycorrhiza we've talked about, they're released. They essentially absorbing the nutrients from the outsides of them into the filaments, and that's how it ends up swelling and becoming the mushroom, the fruiting body. But that's how it's living and feeding. So the three roles, you've got the friendship ones, and porcini is one of those sets, as you might know it, Boletus sedulus. And so whenever you see that, you can look up and think, what tree are you growing with? I know there must be an oak tree or a beech tree nearby. So you've got the friend, you've got the recycler, and this is where I come to the choking part. If we did not have fungi recycling all detritus, all dead organic material, we would just drown and choke in our own organic material. So every animal that dies, every tree that falls, twig, branch, leaf, needs to be recycled, because where else does it go? We would know it traditionally as rotting. But if a tree falls over, it would stay there till the end of time. It is fungi that take hold, and various types of fungi. Some come in for the hardwood at the start. Then the next wave will come in, who'll look after the softwood until you've got nothing but soil. They are, what do we call it, soil magicians. They are agents of decay. And without them bringing that back down and replacing and keeping that cycle of nutrients and making very, very valuable soils, again, they're valuable to the plants in themselves.
I heard a lovely expression there that mushrooms are one of the only species that can take death and turn it into life. And that, like an oak tree is a more broader ecosystem when dead than alive. That when it's dead, it harbors much more biodiversity than when it's actually alive.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't know that. And that's interesting, because I know that oak is considered the number one tree for life as well, isn't it? There are more things exist within the realms of an oak tree whilst it's living. So that he gives even more. That's really good. That's really good. I didn't know that myself.
And then you mentioned the third one. So the first one was the friend. The second one was the recycler. Sacrotrophs. That's the one that recycles. They grow off trees like a shiitake or whatever, or a turkey tail.
So that's recycling that log. So if you see mushrooms traditionally growing out of a dead log in the ground, in the woods, or a tree stump especially, and they can have lots of different shapes. There are some mushrooms that grow on logs, and shiitake is one of them. We don't have them growing wild in this country. So you have to cultivate those. But lots of recyclers look like these little shells, and we call them bracket fungi. These beautiful like seashells in layers and layers that you see, or something called chicken of the woods, a big bright yellow thing.
Oh yeah, I've seen them.
They're all, because trees are made of, there's two of the hardest substances in nature, which are cellulose and lignin, and they're one of the only organic substances that can break those things down and then release the nutrients back into the ground. So yeah, we've done the two of those, and the third job that some fungi do, the killers, yes, the parasites, and they're the ones that will. What a parasite does, of course, is move on to a host and slowly kill it for its nutrients, usually for its food source and source of life. And
that's example. There's some mushrooms that grow on tree, like ivy. Ivy is not a mushroom; it's not a fungus. But when ivy takes over a tree, it slowly chokes out the nutrients and absorbs it. And I guess that's a parasite. So I'd imagine parasitic funguses do a similar type thing, that they'll grow slowly over a tree, for example, and over time they'll kill it. Is that right?
Yeah, and they have different. Some come in and are very severe. The honey fungus is quite a quick turnaround, to my knowledge, and it can kill a tree quickly. Some are very slow, make a very slow impact, and some are necessary. And of course, here's an interesting thing: some parasites are necessary. Some of our parasites on trees, because they actually rot the hardwood. And it was a scientist years ago, a mycologist, that realized that's what gives the tree its flexibility in the wind as it ages. If that hardwood stayed in this huge, enormous tree, it would go over easily. So it's all with purpose, isn't it? Nature, it's all with purpose, which is incredible. So yeah, you've got parasites on trees, parasites on plants, and parasites sometimes on animals, such as cordyceps, which is this thing that people are talking a lot about.
It's in that famous kind of, I guess,
David
TV
Attenborough
series. No, and also the famous TV series at the moment. What's it called? Something of Us, or
The Last of Us.
The Last of Us, yes.